My name is Olivia Morgan, and I spent 9 months in a coma while my husband and best friend fell in love, got married, and took over my life. But in their rush to claim everything I owned, they overlooked the one detail that would be their undoing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Harsh fluorescent light pierced my eyelids as I struggled to open them for the first time in what felt like forever. The world was a blurry haze of white and beeping machines. "She's responsive. Dr. Patel, come quickly." A nurse's voice cut through the fog in my brain. Her silhouette swam into focus as she leaned over me, checking my vitals with practiced efficiency. Tried to speak, but my throat felt like I'd swallowed glass. How long had that breathing tube been down my throat? Why couldn't I move properly? Dr. Patel rushed in, his face a mixture of surprise and professional calm. "Mrs. Morgan, can you hear me? Blink twice if you can understand what I'm saying." I blinked twice, my eyelids feeling as heavy as lead weights. "Remarkable," he murmured, shining a penlight in my eyes. "You've been in a coma for nearly 9 months. Following your car accident. We weren't sure you'd ever wake up." 9 months? The last thing I remembered was driving home in the rain after my gallery showing. The headlights coming toward me on the wrong side of the road. The sickening crunch of metal. Then darkness. "Water," I managed to croak, the word barely audible. The nurse held a small sponge to my parched lips. "Small sips only for now," she said gently. Over the next few days, my world became a blur of tests, scans, and physical therapy sessions. Nurses and doctors marveled at my progress, calling me their miracle patient. But something felt off in the way they interacted with me. Sideways glances and hushed conversations that stopped when I wheeled into the room. It wasn't until my 5th day conscious that I asked the question that had been nagging at me. "When will my husband be here? Has anyone called James?" The young nurse changing my IV froze momentarily, her eyes darting to her colleague before answering. "I believe they've been notified of your improvement," she said carefully. "I'm sure they'll visit soon." They? Why would she say they instead of he? And Rebecca? My friend Rebecca Wilson? Has she visited while I was asleep? Rebecca had been my best friend since college, the sister I never had. We'd opened our art gallery, together, shared every secret. The two nurses exchanged another loaded glance. "I'll let Dr. Patel know you're asking about visitors," the older nurse said, her tone deliberately neutral as they both hurried from the room. That night, I couldn't sleep despite my body's exhaustion. Something wasn't right. The nurse's reactions to simple questions about my husband and best friend had set off alarm bells in my mind. I'd spent years reading people's expressions as an art dealer. It was essential in negotiations to know what people were thinking but not saying. And every staff member who'd interacted with me was hiding something. Just before dawn, I heard 2 orderlies talking outside my door as they mopped the hallway floor. "She's the one whose husband married her best friend while she was under, right?" one whispered. "Yeah, man. Cold as ice. I heard they moved into her house and everything." "She doesn't know yet?" "Nah, doctors are worried about shock affecting her recovery. But they're coming in today, so the shit's about to hit the fan." Their voices faded as they moved down the hallway, but the ringing in my ears grew louder. James and Rebecca? Married? Living in my house? I lay perfectly still, years of gallery negotiations having taught me how to keep my face expressionless despite inner turmoil. Inside, though, my mind was reeling, piecing together the clues I'd missed, the awkward glances, the careful phrasing, the absence of my wedding ring. When a young physical therapy assistant named Maya came in for my morning session, I greeted her with a carefully practiced smile. "Maya," I said casually, "could I borrow your phone for just a minute? Mine was destroyed in the accident, and I'd really like to check my email." She hesitated, biting her lip. We're not supposed to. Please, I whispered. I just need to see if any of my gallery clients have reached out. I won't tell anyone you helped me. Her resolve crumbled. 5 minutes, okay? I need to grab something from the supply room anyway. As soon as she handed me her phone, I ignored my email and went straight to social media. I typed in James's name with shaking fingers. There it was, posted 7 months ago, a wedding announcement with a professional photo. James Mitchell and Rebecca Wilson joyfully announced their marriage. The photo showed them beaming on the steps of City Hall, champagne glasses raised high. Rebecca wore a white dress I'd helped her pick out for a gallery opening last year. James had on the vintage cufflinks I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. I scrolled further, each image like a knife to my heart. Photos of them renovating. Their new home, my historic Victorian that I'd inherited from my grandmother. Pictures of Rebecca wearing my grandmother's antique pearl necklace at their engagement party. James giving tours of their art gallery, the one Rebecca and I had built from nothing over 7 years of 80-hour weeks and maxed-out credit cards. One post particularly caught my eye, a celebration dinner at Bellini's, the restaurant where James had proposed to me. The caption read, "New beginnings in our dream home. So grateful life gave us this second chance." The comment section overflowed with congratulations, including from mutual friends who'd attended our wedding. I heard Maya returning and quickly erased the browser history before handing back her phone, my hands steady despite the rage burning through my veins. "Thank you," I said, my voice even. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing something in my expression. "Perfect," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just perfect." Maya paused, studying my face. "You know, it's weird," she said softly. "They only visited twice in the 9 months you were here. Your husband and friend, I mean. Most families come every day at first." I absorbed this information silently, so they hadn't even bothered to maintain the pretense of caring. "Do you need anything else?" Maya asked. "I've got an extra pudding cup from lunch." "Actually," I said, "could you tell me what day they announced they're coming to visit?" "Tomorrow at 2, she replied. "I heard the head nurse talking about it. They seemed surprised when they heard you were awake." I bet they were. That night, as I lay in my hospital bed, memories flooded back in vivid detail. Rebecca helping, me hang the first exhibition in our gallery space, promising we'd always be partners. James and I planning renovations to my grandmother's house, talking about the children we hoped to raise there. The 3 of us celebrating the gallery's 5th anniversary, laughing and toasting to our success. All those memories now tainted, like finding rot inside what you thought was a perfect piece of fruit. A night nurse came in to check my vitals. "Your husband called again," she said cheerfully. "He and his wife want to know if you need anything. When they visit tomorrow?" "His wife," I repeated, my voice unnaturally calm. "Of course. What time should I expect them?" "Around 2. "Perfect," I said. "Could you help me with something? I'd like to look my best for their visit. Maybe wash my hair?" The nurse smiled, probably thinking I was trying to maintain my dignity. If she only knew what was actually going through my mind. I spent that night planning, remembering my grandmother's words when she'd left me the Victorian. "Olivia, darling, always keep some cards hidden up your sleeve. That secret safe in the library wall is your ace. Don't tell anyone about it until you absolutely need to." At the time, I'd thought she was being dramatic, a product of her generation's distrust of banks after the Depression. Now I understood her wisdom. My grandmother had seen something in James that I'd been too blindly in love to notice. She'd protected me even from beyond the grave. Tomorrow, James and Rebecca would walk into this room expecting to find a broken woman, weak, confused, and grateful for their support and visits. They'd expect forgiveness, maybe even pity. After all, what could I possibly do? I was the victim, the one who'd lost everything while lying helpless in a hospital bed. But they didn't know about my grandmother's secret safe. They didn't know about the property deeds and documents hidden inside, or the fact that I'd spent years cultivating relationships with influential people in the art world who would stand by me. They didn't know that every fake smile and sympathetic glance they'd share over my hospital bed would only fuel my determination. I closed my eyes, feeling more awake than I had in months. Tomorrow I'd begin my performance as the understanding, forgiving ex-wife. And while they basked in their apparent victory, I would begin planning their downfall. Let them come. Let them think they've won. I'll show them what it means to underestimate me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The next morning, Dr. Patel came by earlier than usual, clipboard in hand and a concerned expression on his face. "Mrs. Morgan," he began, settling into the chair beside my bed. "I understand you've been asking about your husband." "Yes," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm looking forward to seeing James today." Dr. Patel shifted uncomfortably. "I think it's important we discuss what's happened while you were in your coma. There have been some changes in your personal circumstances." "Changes?" I echoed, feigning ignorance while watching him squirm. He cleared his throat. "Your husband's relationship status has changed. I wanted to prepare you before his visit so it wouldn't be too much of a shock to your system. We're concerned about your cardiac response to emotional stress given your condition." I let my eyes widen with confusion. "I don't understand. What do you mean by relationship status?" "Mr. Mitchell has remarried," he said gently, "to Ms. Wilson, your friend." I allowed tears to well up in my eyes, not having to fake them entirely. The rage and betrayal were real enough, but I needed him to believe I was hearing this for the first time. That's not possible," I whispered. "We're still married. I've only been asleep for 9 months, he supplied. And yes, technically, there would normally be a waiting period after divorce proceedings, but in cases of medical incapacitation with poor prognosis, there are legal pathways that can be expedited. Legal pathways that can be expedited. Such a clinical phrase for such a monstrous betrayal. So I'm divorced? The word felt strange on my tongue. Dr. Patel nodded, looking relieved that I was taking the news relatively calmly. "The paperwork was processed about 4 months ago. Your medical proxy approved it, given your condition at the time showed little chance of recovery." "My medical proxy?" Another piece of the puzzle. "Who was that?" "Mr. Mitchell was initially, but he transferred it to your father after the divorce proceedings began. For ethical reasons. My father. Of course. Dad had moved to Arizona 3 years ago after remarrying. We spoke monthly at best, and he'd never liked James, but he also never understood my attachment to grandmother's Victorian or my passion for the gallery. He'd wanted me to sell both after grandmother died and invest in something practical. I pretended to process this information slowly, letting a few tears spill down my cheeks. "I'm sorry to deliver this news," Dr. Patel said, patting my hand awkwardly. "We can postpone today's visit if you'd prefer more time to adjust." "No," I said quickly. "No, I want to see them. I need to understand." Dr. Patel looked relieved. "Very well, but I'll have a nurse monitor your vitals during the visit, and we'll keep it brief. Your recovery remains our priority." After he left, Maya arrived with a wheelchair. "Dr. Patel ordered some outdoor time for you," she explained. 15 minutes in the garden before your physical therapy." Once we were alone in the hospital's small courtyard garden, surrounded by potted plants and the white noise of a small fountain, Maya spoke in a low voice. "I heard the doctor talking to you about your husband and friend." I nodded, dropping the pretense of shock now that we were alone. You already knew, didn't you? She asked. When you used my phone yesterday. I suspected something was wrong. Everyone was acting strangely whenever I mentioned them. I met her eyes directly. Thank you for letting me find out on my own terms. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. What they did was wrong, taking advantage while you couldn't defend yourself. I studied her face, sensing an ally. Maya, can I ask you something? How long have you worked here? Almost a year. I started a couple weeks before your accident. So you've been here my entire stay. She nodded. And you said they only visited twice. James and Rebecca? Yeah. She looked uncomfortable. The first time was about a week after you were admitted. They came together, stayed maybe 20 minutes. The second time was about 3 months in, when they brought some lawyer with them. That time they didn't even come into your room, just talked with administration and signed some papers. My stomach tightened. The divorce papers, most likely. What about my father? Did he visit? Once, about 4 months ago. Stayed for half an hour, mostly talked with your doctors. So that's when James had transferred medical proxy. Convenient. Timing. Maya, I need another favor, bigger than borrowing your phone. She glanced around to make sure we were still alone. What is it? I need you to find out who's been paying my medical bills, and I need to know if anyone has accessed my personal belongings from when I was admitted. She frowned. The bills I can probably find out. Billing department likes me. But the belongings, I don't know. Please try. Focus on my keys and my phone if you can. They might still be in storage somewhere. She nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. But why does it matter who's paying? Insurance, right? I shook my head. I'm self-employed. I had a private policy. But if I've been declared legally divorced, I doubt James kept paying the premiums. Maya's eyes widened with understanding. You think they let your insurance lapse? I think they've been very thorough about taking everything, while assuming I'd never wake up to question it. Maya's jaw tightened. That's disgusting. Yes, I agreed. It is. Back in my room, I began methodically testing my physical capabilities while appearing to simply rest. I wiggled my toes beneath the blanket, tensed and released my calf muscles, rotated my ankles in small circles. 9 months of atrophy had taken their toll, but the physical therapists had been working with me even during the coma, preventing the worst of the muscle deterioration. I knew from my session notes that I could stand with assistance and take a few steps with a walker. Not enough to escape, but enough to suggest I might need significant help for a long time. A perception I planned to encourage with James and Rebecca. Around noon, a different nurse came in with a lunch tray and a small paper cup of medications. We're adjusting your pain management before your visitors arrive, she explained. Dr. Patel wants you comfortable but alert. I studied the pills in the cup. One I recognized as the pain medication I'd been taking since waking up. The other was new. What's this one? I asked, picking up the unfamiliar tablet. Just a mild anti-anxiety medication to help with today's emotional stress. I nodded but slipped the anti-anxiety pill under my tongue while pretending to swallow it, then discreetly spit it into my napkin when she turned to adjust my IV. I needed my mind perfectly clear for what was coming. At 1:30, Maya returned, slightly out of breath. I don't have much time, she whispered. Your husband's insurance stopped covering your bills 4 months ago, right after the divorce was finalized. Since then, it's been your father listed as financially responsible, but the actual payments have been coming from a law firm, Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes. The name meant nothing to me, but it was another thread to pull. And my belongings? They were logged into storage when you were admitted. Your phone and keys were signed out by your husband 3 days after your accident. Hospital policy allows immediate family to claim personal effects. She grimaced. Sorry. I wasn't surprised. Of course, James would have taken my keys immediately. Keys to the house, the gallery, my car. Thank you, Maya. You've been incredibly helpful. She squeezed my hand. My shift ends at 3, but I left my number on your bedside table. Text me if you need anything. I wrote it like it's a physical therapy instruction sheet so no one will notice. After she left, I closed my eyes, piecing together the timeline. The accident. James claiming my personal effects almost immediately. Only 2 brief visits. The divorce proceedings. Transferring medical proxy to my conveniently distant father. The marriage to Rebecca. Moving into my house. Taking over my gallery. They'd been efficient. I'd give them that. A soft knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. A different nurse entered, carrying a hairbrush and a small makeup bag. "Your husband called again," she said brightly. "Asked if you needed anything before their visit. I thought you might want to freshen up a bit." "That's very thoughtful," I said, forcing a smile. "Could you help me brush my hair?" As she gently worked through the tangles, I studied my reflection in the small mirror she held up. My face was thinner, paler than I remembered. Dark circles under my eyes. I looked fragile, vulnerable. Perfect. "Would you like a bit of lipstick?" she offered. "Some blush, maybe?" "No," I said softly. "I think this is better. More authentic." She nodded understandingly and helped me into a clean hospital gown. "They'll be here soon. Do you want me to stay with you when they arrive? Could you give us a few minutes alone first? I think it might be easier." "Of course, honey. Just press the call button if you need anything." She patted my hand sympathetically. "And remember, stress isn't good for your recovery. Try to stay calm, no matter what. Stay calm." If she only knew the fury simmering beneath my carefully constructed facade of weakness. At precisely 2 p.m., I heard familiar voices in the hallway. My body tensed involuntarily, and I forced myself to relax, to appear smaller in the hospital bed. I arranged my face into an expression of confused vulnerability, and turned my gaze toward the window as if lost in thought. A way forward that involved stealing everything I'd built. "I'm tired," I murmured, sinking back against the pillows. "This is a lot to process." "Of course," James said, standing immediately. "We don't want to overwhelm you. The doctors said to keep this first visit brief." "We'll come back tomorrow," Rebecca promised. "Is there anything you need? Anything we can bring you?" I shook my head weakly. "No, thank you. I just need rest." James hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to my forehead. It took every ounce of self-control not to recoil from his touch. "Rest well, Olivia. We're so grateful you've come back to us. Come back to them." As if my survival was a gift to them rather than an inconvenient complication to their perfect new life. As they reached the door, I called out softly, "James?" He turned, his expression carefully concerned. "Yes?" "My grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she left, specifically to me. Do you still have it?" A flash of guilt crossed his face before he composed himself. "Of course. It's safe in the safe deposit box." Liar. I'd seen Rebecca wearing it in their wedding announcement. "That's good," I whispered. "It means a lot to me. Family heirlooms, you know? The things passed down that you can't replace." "I understand," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We'll talk more tomorrow." After they left, I let the mask drop, my face hardening into determination. Their visit had confirmed everything. They had methodically dismantled my life while I lay helpless, assuming I would never wake up to challenge them. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought I was alone, weak, with no options but to accept their charity. A guest room in my own house, visiting privileges at my own gallery. They thought I would be grateful for whatever scraps they offered from the life they'd stolen. They had no idea what was waiting for them in grandmother's secret safe. No idea at all. After James and Rebecca left, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The next steps were critical. I needed allies, information, and most importantly, access to my grandmother's secret safe before they found it, if they hadn't already. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. The door opened to reveal an elegant older woman in a tailored suit, her silver hair cut in a sleek bob. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm Diane Reynolds, the hospital's patient advocate." She approached my bed with a professional smile. "Dr. Patel asked me to check on you after your visitors left. How are you feeling?" I studied her carefully. Overwhelmed, to be honest. Understandable. She settled into the chair beside my bed. 9 months is a long time to be gone from your own life, and then to wake up to such changed circumstances. That's one way of putting it, I said dryly. She smiled, a hint of genuine warmth breaking through her professional demeanor. "I've been briefed on your situation. My job is to ensure your rights as a patient are being respected, and to help coordinate your transition once you're discharged." "My rights? Like the right to not be divorced while unconscious?" Diane's expression remained neutral. "Medical proxy laws are complex, Mrs. Morgan, but I'm not here to defend what's happened. I'm here to help you move forward." I wondered how much she knew, how honest I could be. Something in her eyes, a sharpness, an intelligence, made me decide to test the waters. "Ms. Reynolds, may I speak frankly?" "Of course. I'm concerned about where I'll go once I'm discharged. The house I own, the one my grandmother left me, is currently occupied by my ex-husband and former best friend, who seem to think they're doing me a favor by offering me the guest room." Her eyebrow arched slightly. "The house you own? So the property wasn't included in the divorce settlement?" And there it was, my opening. "That's actually a very good question," I said carefully. "One I'd like to discuss with a lawyer before I see James and Rebecca again." Diane nodded, pulling out a small notebook. "I can arrange that. Is there a specific attorney you'd like to contact?" I thought of the firm Maya had mentioned. "Actually, I'd like to know more about a law firm called Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes. Apparently, they've been handling my medical bills since my father became my medical proxy." Diane wrote this down. "Interesting. That's not one of our usual firms for patient affairs." She met my eyes directly. "Mrs. Morgan, forgive my bluntness, but are you suggesting there might be financial impropriety surrounding your care and divorce?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet," I replied. "I'm simply trying to understand what's happened to my assets while I've been unconscious." "A reasonable concern." She made another note. "I can look into this law firm and see what connection they have to your case. Is there another attorney you'd prefer to consult with personally?" I thought of my grandmother's attorney, who had handled her estate. "Yes, Eleanor Blackwell. She was my grandmother's lawyer and handled my inheritance, if she's still practicing." Diane's eyes widened slightly. "Eleanor Blackwell? Of Blackwell? And Associates? You know her?" "By reputation. She's quite formidable, especially in estate litigation." Diane smiled. "An excellent choice. I'll contact her office today." "Thank you." I hesitated, then decided to take a calculated risk. "There's something else. Before my accident, I made certain arrangements regarding my property, specifically my grandmother's Victorian house. I need to know if those arrangements are still legally binding despite the divorce." "What kind of arrangements?" "That's what I need to discuss with Eleanor." Diane studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I understand. Patient confidentiality covers our conversation, Mrs. Morgan. Whatever you're planning, your ex-husband won't hear about it from me or my office." Relief washed over me. Another potential ally. "I appreciate that, Ms. Reynolds. And please, call me Olivia." "Olivia it is." She stood, straightening her jacket. "I'll contact Ms. Blackwell immediately. Is there anything else you need in the meantime?" Thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. Could you find out when I might be able to access my personal accounts?" banking, email, that sort of thing? I'm assuming my passwords have all expired after 9 months. I'll have our technology assistants. Team visit you tomorrow. They can help with identity verification and account recovery. She paused at the door. Rest now, Olivia. Recovery is your first priority, but protecting your interests is a close second. After she left, I felt a spark of hope for the first time since waking. If Eleanor was still practicing, and if the documents in my grandmother's safe were what I thought they were, James and Rebecca's perfect new life was about to get considerably less perfect. The rest of the day passed in a haze of medical tests and physical therapy. I carefully maintained my facade of weakness, ensuring that the progress notes in my chart would suggest a long, difficult recovery ahead. The longer James and Rebecca believed I was helpless, the more time I would have to build my case against them. That evening, Maya texted me from her personal phone. Checked with a friend in administration. Your discharge is tentatively scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Standard protocol would send you to your listed next of kin's residence. 2 weeks. Not much time to prepare. I texted back, any luck finding my phone? No, but I did find something interesting. Your accident report. The other driver was never identified. Hit and run. Police investigation was inconclusive. I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. My accident had been a hit and run? That detail hadn't seemed important when I first woke up, but now? Any surveillance footage? I texted back. Report says cameras in the area were non-functional that night. Convenient, right? Too convenient. Maya, this may sound paranoid, but could you find out who was the first person to arrive at the hospital after my accident? And who made the decision to put me in a medically induced coma? 3 dots appeared as she typed her response, then, now you've got me curious. I'll dig deeper. I set the phone down, my mind whirling with new, disturbing possibilities. The timing of everything, the accident, James and Rebecca's relationship, the quick divorce, had seemed suspicious enough. But a hit and run with no witnesses and conveniently malfunctioning cameras? I needed answers, and I needed them before I was discharged into James and Rebecca's care. The next morning, an unexpected visitor arrived, a stylish woman in her 70s, with a leather briefcase and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. Olivia Morgan, she said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone used to commanding courtrooms. You look remarkably good for someone who's been in a coma for 9 months. Eleanor, I breathed, recognizing my grandmother's attorney immediately. You came. Of course I came. She set her briefcase down and took the chair beside my bed, studying me with a critical eye. Diane Reynolds called me yesterday. Said you needed legal counsel regarding your divorce and property matters. Her lips thinned. I was rather surprised to learn you'd been divorced, considering I was never notified as your estate attorney. You weren't notified because they didn't want you involved, I said. James and Rebecca? Ah, yes, the new happy couple. Eleanor's voice dripped with disdain. I've had the misfortune of seeing their social media announcements. Living in your grandmother's house, I believe? And running my gallery, I added. They seem to think they've acquired everything I owned. Everything I own? Eleanor snorted. Well, they're in for a rather rude awakening. My heart skipped a beat. Then you know about your grandmother's provisions? Of course I do, Olivia. I drafted them. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Margaret. Sullivan was a formidable woman who trusted very few people. She never particularly cared for your husband. Ex-husband, apparently, I corrected. Yes, well, about that. Eleanor removed her reading glasses from a chain around her neck and perched them on her nose. I've reviewed the divorce proceedings. They were, shall we say, suspiciously expedited, James. Transferred medical proxy to my father. Indeed. And your father, who hasn't bothered to visit you since signing those papers, was remarkably accommodating. She looked up at me sharply. When did you last speak with Arthur? About a month before my accident. We're not close, especially since He remarried and moved to Arizona. Eleanor made a note. Have you been told who's been paying your medical bills? A law firm called Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes. I've never heard of them. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. I have. They primarily handle corporate acquisitions and real estate transfers, not the sort of firm one typically associates with medical matters. She tapped her pen against the folder. Interesting choice. What do you think it means? I think, my dear, that your ex-husband and former friend have been very busy. She leaned forward, but not as clever as they believe themselves to be. Eleanor pulled out a document and laid it on my lap. Your grandmother's property deed for the Victorian house on Maple Street. Note the specific language in Section 4. I scanned the document, my eyes landing on the highlighted passage. Property is bequeathed solely to Olivia Margaret Morgan and cannot be transferred, sold, or encumbered without her explicit written consent, verified by either Eleanor Blackwell or her legal successor at Blackwell and Associates. So, even with the divorce, I began. The house remains yours entirely, Eleanor confirmed. Any attempt to transfer ownership would require my verification of your signature, which I certainly never provided. Relief washed over me. What about the gallery? Eleanor pulled out another document. Artisan Gallery LLC is registered solely in your name, with Rebecca Wilson listed as an employee, albeit a senior one. There's no legal basis for her to claim ownership without a formal transfer of business assets, which again would require proper documentation, which you would have to verify. Precisely. Her smile was razor sharp. Your grandmother was very specific about this arrangement. She said, and I quote, Olivia has excellent taste in art, but questionable taste in men. Let's make sure the former doesn't get compromised by the latter. I laughed, despite myself. That sounded exactly like grandmother. But what about the divorce? I asked. Wouldn't James be entitled to some portion as my spouse? That's where things get particularly interesting. Eleanor pulled out another document. Do you recall signing a post-nuptial agreement 3 years ago, after you inherited the gallery space? I frowned, thinking back. Yes, James suggested it. Actually, said it would protect the gallery if his consulting business ever faced liability issues. A rare moment of foresight on his part, though I suspect his motives weren't entirely altruistic. Eleanor handed me the agreement. This post-nuptial specifically excludes your inherited properties and business from marital assets. It was meant to protect them from his potential creditors, but it works equally well to protect them from him in a divorce. I stared at the document in disbelief. So he essentially signed away any claim to my most valuable assets. Indeed. And, based on my preliminary investigation, it appears he's been operating under the assumption that your prolonged incapacitation somehow voided these arrangements. But it doesn't. Not in the slightest. Eleanor collected the documents and returned them to her briefcase. There's something else you should know, Olivia. The safe in your grandmother's library, the one behind the portrait of her in Venice. Breath caught. You know about that? I helped her set it up. The contents are quite illuminating. Eleanor's eyes met mine. Has anyone mentioned accessing it since your accident? No, I don't think they know about it. I hesitated. At least I hope they don't. Your grandmother was quite secretive about it. The only people who knew were you, me, and her, and she made sure it was virtually undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look. What's in it, Eleanor? I know there are documents, but grandmother never specified exactly what. Eleanor's expression became grave. Your grandmother had concerns about James almost from the beginning. She hired a private investigator to look into his background about 6 years ago, shortly after you were married. My stomach dropped. What did she find? Nothing definitive at the time, but enough red flags that she continued the surveillance periodically. Eleanor leaned closer. The safe contains those reports, along with some financial documentation that suggests your husband's consulting business wasn't entirely what he claimed it to be. What do you mean? I mean, my dear, that James Mitchell has a history of attaching himself to wealthy women, draining their resources, and moving on. Your grandmother documented at least 2 previous relationships that followed this pattern. Before he met you? The room seemed to spin around me. Are you saying he targeted me from the beginning? For my money? You were a promising young gallery owner from a wealthy family, an attractive prospect. Eleanor's voice softened slightly. The reports also contain information about his relationship with Rebecca Wilson that predates your accident by approximately 6 months. 6 months? My supposed best friend and my husband had been involved behind my back for 6 months before my conveniently timed accident. The hit and run, I whispered. Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. What hit and run? My accident. It was a hit and run. No witnesses, no surveillance footage. Eleanor's expression darkened. That wasn't in the police report I reviewed. My physical therapist found it in my hospital records. I met Eleanor's gaze. I think we need to consider the possibility that my accident wasn't an accident. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, then nodded decisively. I think you're right. And if that's the case, we need to move very carefully. She checked her watch. I've stayed longer than I intended. Your ex-husband and his new wife are scheduled to visit again today, correct? At 2 o'clock. Then I suggest you continue to play the vulnerable, confused patient. Let them believe you're accepting their version of events while we gather evidence. She stood, collecting her briefcase. I'll file motions today to freeze any attempts to sell or transfer your properties, but I'll do it quietly, through channels they're unlikely to monitor. What about when I'm discharged? They're expecting me to move into the guest room of my own house. Eleanor's smile was cold. Let them think that's the plan for now. 2 weeks gives us plenty of time to prepare a rather unpleasant surprise for the happy couple. As she reached the door, I called after her. Eleanor, thank you. My grandmother knew what she was doing when she chose you. Margaret Sullivan was my dearest friend for 40 years, she replied, and you are very much her granddaughter. Rest now, Olivia, and remember, the best revenge requires patience. After she left, I lay back against the pillows, processing everything I'd learned. The betrayal was even deeper than I'd imagined, not just opportunistic after my accident, but planned, calculated, possibly even orchestrated. James and Rebecca hadn't just betrayed me. If Eleanor's suspicions were correct, they had tried to kill me, and now they were planning to care for me in my own home. I picked up my phone and texted Maya. Need more info on my accident ASAP. Also, any chance you could get me a copy of my medical records? Especially the initial treatment decisions. Her response came quickly. Working on it. BTW. Heard your visitors yesterday asking nurses about your discharge plan and prognosis. They seemed very interested in your cognitive status. Of course they were. They needed to know how much I remembered, how much I suspected, whether I would be a manageable invalid or a threat to their new life. Well, let them wonder. Let them think I was still the trusting, naive woman they had betrayed. I would play my role perfectly, the confused, grateful patient accepting their charity. And all the while, I would be laying the groundwork for their destruction. Because as my grandmother always said, the Sullivan women don't get mad, they get everything. James and Rebecca arrived promptly at 2 o'clock that afternoon, armed with flowers, a small gift bag, and carefully rehearsed smiles. I was ready for them, having spent the morning practicing my expressions in the small mirror the nurses had provided, the confused vulnerability, the hesitant gratitude, the occasional flash of hurt quickly suppressed. Olivia, you look better today, Rebecca chirped, setting a bouquet of lilies on the side table. Not my favorite flowers. She knew that. She'd been my best friend for over a decade. just another small detail that revealed the depth of her deception. "The doctors say I'm making good progress," I replied softly, watching as James hung back slightly. Was that guilt in his eyes, or just discomfort? "We brought you something," Rebecca continued, pushing the gift bag forward. "Some essentials for the hospital stay, lip balm, hand cream, a new journal to write in. I remember how you always liked to journal." I did like to journal. I had kept detailed diaries for years, diaries that had been in my bedside drawer at home. Had they read them? The thought made my skin crawl. "Thank you," I murmured, accepting the bag without looking inside. "That's thoughtful." James finally approached, taking the chair beside my bed. "How are you feeling today, Liv?" "Really?" "Confused, mostly," I admitted, allowing a slight tremor in my voice. "It's hard to process everything. 9 months gone in. What feels like the blink of an eye to me." Rebecca perched on the edge of the bed, uninvited. Her expensive perfume, was it the Chanel I had always coveted but considered too extravagant, wafted over me. "We want to help make the transition easier for you. The doctors say you could be discharged in about 2 weeks." "So I've heard," I said. "They mentioned rehabilitation, physical therapy, occupational therapy. All of which you can do while staying with us." James jumped in eagerly. "We've already contacted some in-home care services." Us. Their presumption was breathtaking. "That's very generous," I said carefully. "But I wouldn't want to impose on your new life together." "It's no imposition," Rebecca insisted, reaching for my hand. I fought the urge to pull away. "We want to help. After everything we've been through together." Everything we've been through. As if my coma had been a shared hardship for all of us. I let my gaze drift to the window. "I've been trying to piece everything together. The timeline, I mean. When exactly did you two... When did things change between you?" They exchanged a quick glance. So quick I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching for it. "It was very gradual," James said, his voice gentle but practiced. "About 3 months after your accident, when the doctors started using words like persistent vegetative state and minimal chance of recovery. 3 months. Not the 6 months Eleanor had mentioned from my grandmother's private investigator reports." "We were both grieving," Rebecca added, "supporting each other through the hardest time of our lives." I nodded slowly, as if trying to comprehend. "And the divorce? How did that happen when I couldn't consent?" Another glance between them. "Your father," James explained. "As your next of kin, he was consulted. The doctors advised that your condition was unlikely to change, and there were financial considerations, medical bills, insurance, the gallery's future." "I see." I paused deliberately. "And who's been paying my hospital bills?" "The doctors mentioned something about a law firm." James shifted uncomfortably. "Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes. They're handling the estate matters during your recovery." "Estate matters," I repeated. "That sounds so... final." "Poor choice of words." James backpedaled quickly. "Just the practical arrangements while you were incapacitated." "Like the gallery?" I asked, keeping my tone curious rather than accusatory. I noticed Rebecca mentioned our dream home in her social media post. "Does that mean you've taken over the gallery too?" Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. "We've been managing it, yes. Keeping it going in your absence. The artists still ask about you all the time." I bet they did. The gallery had been built on my relationships with emerging artists, my eye for undiscovered talent. "That's good to know," I said. "I'd love to visit when I'm discharged, see what's changed." "Of course," James agreed too quickly. "Though the doctors have advised a gradual reintegration into normal activities. Stress management is crucial for brain injury recovery." "How convenient. Keep me isolated, limit my contacts, control my access to information." "You mentioned my father made decisions about the divorce," I said, switching topics abruptly to see their reaction. Has he visited me? Once, Rebecca said. About 4 months ago. He was quite upset, of course, but his wife's health hasn't been good and Arizona is far. Of course, I nodded understandingly. And my grandmother's house? I'm a little confused about what happened with that. It was left specifically to me in her will. James cleared his throat. The property arrangements were part of the divorce settlement, given the circumstances. But it's still your home too, Olivia. That's why we want you to come stay with us. A lie. A blatant lie that Eleanor had already disproven. The house could not have been part of any divorce settlement without Eleanor's verification of my signature. I see, I said again, letting my eyes fill with tears. It was her special gift to me, the place where she taught me about art, about being independent. Rebecca squeezed my hand. And we've honored that. We've kept everything just as you would want it. Another lie. Their social media had shown the extensive renovations. My grandmother's cherished library converted to a home gym. Her garden room transformed into some kind of meditation space with Rebecca's yoga equipment. Turned my face away, letting them interpret my expression as emotional overwhelm rather than disgust. I think I need to rest now, I whispered. It's all still so much to take in. Of course, honey. Rebecca stood, smoothing her designer dress. Was that new? How much of my money had they spent on their new wardrobes? We'll come back tomorrow. Maybe bring some photos of the gallery's recent showings to cheer you up. James hesitated, then leaned down to kiss my forehead again. Rest well, Liv. We're here for you. Whatever you need. After they left, I pulled out my phone and texted Maya. I need to see all their social media posts since my accident. Everything. They've deleted too, if possible. While waiting for her response, I examined the gift bag they'd brought. Hand cream from a luxury brand Rebecca had always coveted, but claimed was too expensive. A journal with a quote about new beginnings on the cover, and at the bottom, a small framed photo of the three of us from years ago, me in the middle, James and Rebecca on either side, all smiling at a gallery opening. They'd cut out the other people in the original photo, my grandmother on one side, and my mentor, Victor Reyes, on the other. Erased, just like they'd tried to erase me. I set the frame face down on the side table just as my phone buzzed with Maya's response. My roommate works in digital forensics. She can help. Also, I got your initial medical records, coming by during my break, stuff you need to see. An hour later, Maya slipped into my room, closing the door quietly behind her. Her face was tense. What did you find? I asked. She pulled a folder from her bag. Your admission records from the night of the accident. The paramedic's initial assessment listed you with a Glasgow Coma scale of 12. That's moderately injured but responsive. I wasn't in a coma when I arrived? No, you were talking, confused but conscious. She opened the folder, pointing to the intake notes. See here? You were asking about another vehicle, saying something about being run off the road. My heart pounded. I remembered that much. But then look at this. She flipped to another page. 3 hours after admission, your condition suddenly deteriorated, and you were placed in a medically induced coma due to increasing intracranial pressure. Is that unusual? Sometimes pressure builds gradually after head trauma, but this rapid decline raised questions with one of the attending nurses. She made a note here, see, requesting additional scans, but they were never ordered. Who was my attending physician? Maya pointed to a signature. Dr. Spencer Lowe. He's not on staff here anymore. Left about 6 months ago for a private practice in the Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands, known for banking privacy and lack of extradition. And who authorized the coma induction? Dr. Lowe, with consent from James, I finished for her. She nodded. He was here within 20 minutes of your admission, which is interesting considering the accident happened 15 miles from your house, And according to your gallery staff, he had told them he was out of town that weekend at a conference in Chicago. Out of town? Yet somehow at my hospital bedside. Within minutes. There's more, Maya continued, lowering her voice. I checked the visitor logs from your first month here. James came daily, but always during shift changes when there was minimal staff. And he always asked to be alone with you. And Rebecca started visiting in the second week, also during shift changes, always shortly after James left, never together at first. The implications were chilling. What had they done during those private visits? What conversations had they had while I lay unconscious, unable to hear or respond? I need to see the security footage from those visits, I said. Maya shook her head. Hospital security footage is only kept for 90 days unless there's a specific reason to archive it. Of course, another dead end. But, Maya added, I did find something else interesting. The nurse's notes mention James asking very specific questions about your prognosis, particularly about brain damage and memory loss. He seemed especially concerned about whether you'd remember the days leading up to your accident. The days when, according to Eleanor, he'd already been involved with Rebecca. Maya glanced at her watch. I need to get back to my station. But there's one more thing you should know. I overheard James at the nurse's station today asking about transferring your care to a long-term rehabilitation facility in Arizona. Arizona? Where my father lives? Yes. He mentioned something about it being better for you to be near family during your recovery. Away from my house, away from my gallery, away from Eleanor Blackwell and anyone else who might help me recover what was mine. When was he planning this transfer? He was asking about expediting your discharge, possibly as early as next week. A week, not 2 weeks as they'd told me. They were trying to get me out of here and away from Boston as quickly as possible. Maya, I need a favor, a big one. Name it. I need you to delay my discharge, create concerns about my readiness, my stability. Anything to keep me here until Eleanor Blackwell can put legal protections in place. She nodded without hesitation. Consider it done. The physical therapy department can easily document concerns about your mobility that would justify extended inpatient care. After she left, I pulled out my phone again and texted Eleanor. They're trying to transfer me to Arizona next week. Need legal intervention ASAP. Her response was immediate. Already in process. Court orders being filed today. Do not sign anything they bring you. I stared out the window at the Boston skyline, my mind racing. James and Rebecca had been thorough in their planning, methodical in their execution. But they'd made critical mistakes. They'd underestimated my grandmother's foresight. They'd underestimated Eleanor Blackwell's determination. They'd underestimated the loyalty of people like Maya, and most importantly, they'd underestimated me. My phone buzzed again. Maya's roommate had come through with the social media archive. I scrolled through dozens of posts. James and Rebecca celebrating in my home, wearing clothes purchased with my money, drinking wine from my grandmother's cellar. The renovation photos were particularly painful, my carefully curated home transformed to suit their tastes. But one post from Rebecca, dated just 3 weeks after my accident, caught my attention. New beginnings sometimes come from tragic endings. Life is short. Seize happiness where you find it. Blessed Krog new chapter. 3 weeks. Not 3 months as James had claimed today. Not even the 6 months from Eleanor's information. Rebecca had been publicly hinting at their relationship just 3 weeks after my accident. Unless, of course, it had begun long before. I dug deeper into the archive, looking at comments, tags, linked accounts. And there it was, a comment from Rebecca on a photo of James at a supposed business dinner 4 months before my accident. Looking handsome as always. Can't wait for our consultation tomorrow. Our consultation, with a winking emoji. Kept scrolling, finding more breadcrumbs scattered throughout their social media history. Private jokes, veiled references. Comments that seemed innocent, unless you were looking for evidence of an affair. They hadn't even been particularly careful about hiding it. They just never expected I would wake up to discover their betrayal. A soft knock at my door interrupted my investigation. A hospital technician entered, rolling a computer cart. "Mrs. Morgan? I'm Tyler from Technology Services. Ms. Reynolds asked me to help you regain access to your accounts." For the next hour, Tyler helped me recover access to my email, online banking, and cloud storage. The email was the most revealing. Hundreds of unread messages, including numerous concerned inquiries from artists and clients that had gone unanswered or received curt replies from Rebecca claiming to speak on my behalf. My banking records confirmed what I had suspected: systematic draining of my accounts, with large transfers to the mysterious law firm, Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes, and to a new joint account in James and Rebecca's names. But the most disturbing discovery came from my cloud storage. Among my backed-up phone data was my calendar from the weeks before the accident, including an appointment with another gallery owner, Victor Reyes, scheduled for the day after my accident. The note attached to the appointment read, "Discuss James's financial irregularities. Review bank statements and missing inventory documentation." I had been investigating James. I had found something significant enough to discuss with my mentor and most trusted advisor in the art world. And the very next day, I had been run off the road by an unidentified driver. This wasn't opportunistic betrayal. This was premeditated. They hadn't just taken advantage of my accident, they had caused it. And when that failed to kill me, they had ensured I was placed in a coma, one I was never expected to wake from. As Tyler packed up his equipment, my phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Emergency court order granted. You cannot be transferred without court approval. James and Peterson firm being served tomorrow morning. Prepare for backlash." I thanked Tyler for his help, then settled back against my pillows, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, anger, perhaps even danger. James and Rebecca would realize their carefully constructed plans were crumbling. But I was ready. The helpless victim they thought they'd created was gone. In her place was my grandmother's true heir, a woman who would not rest until justice was served. I woke to commotion outside my hospital room. James's voice raised in protest, demanding to see administrators. Eleanor's court order had arrived. Maya slipped in, excitement in her eyes. "Your ex-husband is having a complete meltdown at the nurse's station." "No surprise," I said, sitting up straighter. "Has Rebecca shown up yet?" "Not yet, but he's making frantic calls." The door opened and Eleanor swept in, followed by Diane. "Your ex-husband is making quite a scene, exactly as expected." "The police have been called," Diane added. "Not because of the disturbance, but because of what we found." Eleanor removed several documents from her briefcase. "Peterson, Daniels, and Hughes is a shell company registered 3 weeks before your accident, with James Mitchell as the primary stakeholder. They created a fake law firm?" "Indeed, through which they've been systematically transferring your assets. Your father signed over medical proxy rights for $50,000, Diane added, handing me a document. "And we've located Victor Reyes. He confirms you contacted him about financial irregularities at the gallery before your accident. James had been selling pieces from your private collection and replacing them with forgeries," Eleanor explained. "Approximately $3 million worth over 2 years. You were getting too close to discovering the truth." My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Rebecca just arrived. They both look panicked." "Perfect timing," Eleanor said, placing a small recording device on the bedside table. "For additional documentation." The door burst open. James stormed in, charm replaced by fury. Rebecca followed, face ashen. "What the hell is this?" James thrust a document toward Eleanor. "The divorce was finalized months ago. All property settlements were legally executed." "Were they?" Margaret Sullivan's estate explicitly required my verification of any property transfers. Verification I never provided. That's a technicality. Arthur Morgan approved everything. Position he obtained through documented fraud, Eleanor replied. The $50,000 consulting fee leaves quite a paper trail. Rebecca stepped forward. Olivia, this is ridiculous. We've been taking care of everything. Stole my artwork, drained my accounts, and tried to have me transferred to Arizona to die quietly. I finished. You also tried to kill me when I got too close to discovering James's theft. That's insane. James sputtered. You had a car accident. I was out of town. Yet you arrived at the hospital 20 minutes after my admission. Quite a feat for someone supposedly in Chicago. Rebecca turned to James, confusion crossing her face. You told me you were driving back when you got the call. Hospital records show Olivia was conscious upon admission, Eleanor continued, saying something about being run off the road. This is absurd, James's voice rose. Your brain was damaged. You're confused. Then explain the shell company you created weeks before my accident. Explain the $3 million in artwork replaced with forgeries. James froze. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. What is she talking about, James? I don't know anything about that, Rebecca insisted. James told me everything was being handled. Legally? Like he told you I would want you two to be happy together? I asked. That I would want you to have my gallery, my house, my life? He said you'd discussed it, Rebecca whispered. That if anything happened, you'd want us to look after each other. I laughed harshly. And you believed that? You thought I'd want my husband to marry you while I lay unconscious? The doctors said you were brain dead, she insisted tearfully. That even if you woke up, you wouldn't be you. That made it acceptable to steal my identity, to wear my grandmother's jewelry, to take over my gallery? The gallery was failing without you, James interjected. You should be grateful. For being run off the road, for being deliberately kept in a coma by a doctor who's now in the Caymans, for having my life stolen piece by piece. I never, Rebecca began, but James cut her off. Enough. You can't prove any of it. Actually, a new voice interrupted, we can prove quite a bit. Detective Santos stepped in, showing his badge. We've executed search warrants at your home, office, and the gallery. The forensic accountants are particularly interested in the Peterson firm's records. Rebecca backed away from James. I didn't know about any of this. While wearing my grandmother's pearls, while sleeping in my bed, while spending my money? Her face crumpled. I'm sorry. Yet you began a relationship with my husband months before my accident. Your social media left quite a trail. Because we never expected... She stopped abruptly. Never expected me to wake up, I finished. Never expected to be caught. I need you both to come with me, Detective Santos said. We can do this at the station, or I can place you under arrest. This is a misunderstanding, James insisted. I had nothing to do with the accident, Rebecca protested. That was never the plan. We were just going to... Rebecca, James snapped. Shut up. But it was too late. Her slip had confirmed everything. Officers led them away, James in handcuffs after lunging for Eleanor's recorder, Rebecca following voluntarily but shell-shocked. I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. Ms. Wilson seems ready to throw Mr. Mitchell to the wolves, Eleanor observed, closing the door. She always was pragmatic, I said tiredly. What happens now? We begin reclaiming everything they took from you. The criminal charges are in the district attorney's hands now. I gazed out the window, suddenly uncertain. I don't know if I can go back to the house. Not with the memories. Your grandmother faced a similar dilemma once, Eleanor said. Her first husband had an affair with her sister, in her own home. Eleanor's eyes held a distant memory. Margaret threw them both out, then transformed that wing of the house. Never let betrayal steal what's rightfully yours, she told me. Change it, remake it, but never surrender it. My grandmother had never mentioned this chapter of her life, yet another way she had protected me. "She'd be proud of you, Olivia," Eleanor said softly, "for fighting back." "I had help," I replied. "I wasn't alone. Neither was Margaret. Neither are any of us, if we're fortunate enough to find the right allies." 6 months later, I stood in the renovated gallery, surveying the transformation. Maya, now my operations manager, approached with a clipboard. "The final pieces for the opening arrived," she said. "And the house renovations?" "Complete, next week. Just in time for the foundation launch. The Margaret Sullivan Foundation for Arts Recovery, my tribute to my grandmother, using the settlement money to help artists recover stolen works. James was serving 8 years for fraud and conspiracy. Rebecca had received 3 years in exchange for her testimony. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had plotted to steal my life, my legacy, everything my grandmother had built. In doing so, they had overlooked the most crucial detail: the unbreakable bonds Margaret Sullivan had forged to protect what she valued most. Not just the legal documents in the secret safe, though those had proved decisive. My grandmother's most powerful legacy had been the network of loyal people she'd connected me with: Eleanor, Victor, and new allies like Maya and Diane. James and Rebecca had meant to destroy me, but in their arrogance, they had overlooked one crucial detail. I was Margaret Sullivan's granddaughter, and Sullivan women don't break. We rebuild. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.